This narrative in Genesis 22, I believe, contains one of the most difficult stories in the entire Torah. What we call in Hebrew, Akedah, that is the binding of Isaac. I believe it's a father's worst nightmare. Yesterday, I was sitting in a study, writing getting my PowerPoint together, and I can count like 3 times into the PowerPoint. I had to stop and go wash my face because I did not want to cry. It's when you put yourself in his shoes. Now, most of the time we study text and we cannot relate. We study text and we think it's just stories. But when you put yourself in the character's shoes, it becomes different. You see things that you may not have actually noticed because you were just reading text. Now, I believe this is a father's worst nightmare. Yah comes to Abraham and commands him to offer up his son Isaac as a sacrifice. It's troubling. It's even twisted. And it's certainly difficult to read. And yet, there it is. It's right there in the Torah, in the pages of Yah's own book. How do we make any sense of it? Scholars have pastors, teachers, everybody has tried to make sense of this. I mean, what do you think we're supposed to learn from this story? What do you find troubling about it? These were some of the questions I was asking myself last night, as I put this together. Now, what are some of the explanations that you've heard of this story? And do these explanations resonate with you? Why or why not? So I'm going to open this up, but please, some rules. Don't hijack. Just go straight to the point. I'll take maybe 3 people if you can answer all 4 of them, or maybe 1, 2, it doesn't matter. But let it be brief. Don't hijack. So 4 questions. I know you've read the narrative. You know about the narrative. What do you think we're supposed to learn from this story? Because the Torah is a manual for instructions. These stories are written so that we will learn certain things from it. In this challenging story of Yah asking a father to put his son on the altar, what are we supposed to learn from it? What do you find troubling about it? What are some of the explanations that you've heard of this story? And do they resonate with you? Why? If they do, why not if they don't? I'll take 3 people if anybody is interested in giving it a shot.
Rabbi, this is Marie.
Madam Marie.
I just wanted to say that for me, when Father says that he will not accept anything less than our all, and in the 10 Commandments he says to love him with all our hearts. And so this test of Abraham was to really test him to the core, to see would he give up his most prized possession, the person that he loved more than anything else in this world. And I know as a mom, that would be really, really hard for me to do. And I would really question myself over and over again, even though I would know that this is actually Yahweh asking me to do this, I would still have doubt in myself to wonder why would he ask me to do such a thing, you know? And so I see this as this is how Yahweh tests our mettle, to see really, do we really believe what we say, and do we really love him to the extent of giving everything?
Awesome.
I'm sure glad I wasn't in Abraham's shoes.
Me too. Awesome. Any other attempt before I look at the
Yeah.
chat?
Rabbi,
Okay, go ahead, Jason.
uh, what I see is because I was reading this the other day, in Genesis 15, Abraham has a vision, and in that vision, he's talking with Yah, and Yah begins to show him that all his descendants are going to be, they can't even be numbered, from when Yah took him up in that vision.
Correct.
And his complaint to Yah was, but I don't even have somebody from my own loins that's going to be over my house to continue my heritage, like to continue what this thing is that you've given me. And now we fast forward, Yah is saying to him, the one thing that you've been praying for that I've given you in the vision, let's see if that thing that I've given you is more important than who I am. So that's what it breaks down to for me on one end. And on the other spectrum, being taught from Christianity, it was a foreshadow of God sacrificing Yeshua. So those two battles is not battles, but those are the two things that I kind of get from it.
Okay, please remind me to comment on that foreshadow if I don't, okay? Please remind me.
Okay.
Rabbi,
Please go ahead.
I just want to summarize it in a couple of words. Follow Yah. It's a very, very tough road. It's not easy.
Yes.
Because he will ask of you and he will pull from you things that you don't like or things that make you uncomfortable. So it's a very, very, very hard road to follow Yah. That's it.
Awesome. What you're saying is true. Imagine, what's his name? Jacob comes before Pharaoh and Pharaoh asks him, how many are the days of your years? And he says, the days of my years has been few and terrible. This comes from Jacob. It's been terrible. It is sure. It is hard. Awesome.
Rabbi,
I want to say anything.
can
Yes,
I?
please go ahead. I want to hear.
Yes, I don't want to confuse anybody, but can you address this teaching that says an evil angel came? My name is Sherry McFarland, and I am new to the teachings,
Okay.
but I just wanted to know some suggest there was an evil angel that came to trick Abraham into killing his only son, and Yah intervened. I don't know. Have you heard of that teaching?
No, I have not, but I know it's not accurate though.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, I have not, but I know it's not accurate. No, this was really,
Okay.
this
All
was really a test.
Thank you.
Rabbi.
All right. Thank you.
Yes.
Rabbi, Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom, Mr. Wilson.
How are you?
I'm doing great, sir.
Good. I don't want to hold you because I know you said make your statements short and quick. Just like Brother Jason that mentioned what he was taught in Christianity, I too was taught that same thing about the foreshadowing of Christ to come. The statement, though, that I want to make concerning the sacrifice of Isaac, what comes to me is those things that we love, that we hold dear to, that we must sacrifice those things for Yah, because he's more important than those things.
Thanks. Awesome.
Thank you.
Awesome. You see, it's a difficult one. It's a difficult one. And I was having the same difficulties. Like I've always said, sometimes we know too much. So when we read the text, we don't see the intensity of it. So my issue yesterday was trying to forget everything that I know it's going on here and try to see it fresh. And yeah, I was like, I'm not doing this one. Even today, if Yah comes and tells me this, I might fail, knowing what I know, because it is difficult. One possible lesson that we may learn here would be that we should surrender completely to Yah's will, no matter the command, no matter the cost. That is, in a toss-up between a divine command and our intuitive notions of morality, there's no contest. Yah's authority trumps all else. That is one thing that we can get from this interaction here. But imagine this. Yah commands you to do something, to harm one of your loved ones, and your gut, your conscience tells you that it is wrong. Is your job to suppress that gut instinct? Is that what Abraham's example is coming to teach us? After all, you're not the judge of right and wrong. Yah is. Yah wills it. So are we supposed to take the position that since Yah wills it, so end of story? When we view this, when we view the binding of Isaac in this light, it becomes a pure test of faith. Intended to see whether Abraham will be steadfast in his devotion to Yah, or whether he will struggle and give in to his love for his son. That's one way to read it. But I think that if we read it that way, it misses the big part of the story. I want to argue that we should look at it differently. There's a lot of ways to look at it, but I'm going to propose this to you. We want to argue that the binding of Isaac is more than just a test of faith. It's more about Abraham's loyalty. But the loyalty is to whom? I repeat that. The test here is about Abraham's loyalty. The question that is posed after that is, loyalty to whom? Put that in your spirit. Let's tackle the text. Genesis 22. Where did it go? There we go. My thing is messing up. Okay, Genesis 22. And it came to pass after these things that Elohim tested Abraham. Pause. Who here knows that this is a test? Those of you who's been studying with us, you know we have a camera. How many people know that this is a test? That's a question. Yeah. Yes, go ahead.
Shabbat Shalom, Rabbi. It seems to me that only one person knows, and that's Yah.
That's Yah. Okay. I think it's two people. Who's the second person who knows that this is a test?
The second one is Moshe.
Moshe? Okay. Moshe? Okay, yes. I give you that. I give you 90% of that. Change the Moshe to someone else. When you look at the camera in studying tonight, you have what the Bernard says yourself, the readers. That's awesome. We, the readers, know that this is the test, and that is the problem. We know too much. So we think that everybody in the narrative knows what we know. No. That is the difficulty in studying the text. You know too much. You know what is going to happen in chapters 50. Abraham doesn't know. Isaac has no clue. Sarah has no clue. The only two people who have this information is Yah and then the reader. But don't let that get in the way of the narrative. Read it as that you are Abraham and you don't know that this is a test. Okay, awesome. And it came to pass after these things that Elohim tested Abraham, and he said to him, Abraham, and he said, Here I am. And he said, Please take your son, your only one, whom you love, yes, Isaac, and go away to the land of Moriah and bring him up there for a burnt offering on one of the mountains, of which I will tell you. And Abraham arose early in the morning, and he saddled his donkey, and he took his 2 young men with him, and Isaac his son, and he split wood for a burnt offering. And he arose and went to the place of which Elohim had told him. What would make Abraham not question, raise any objections, pray to be strengthened, or protest? Think about it. What will make this man look at the command? The command came, and he rises early the next morning. We know that the command comes at night. He rises early the next morning, and he's gone. No complaints. I'm going to make a statement. Madam Cynthia wanted to say something. Go for it before I make a statement. Oh, somebody wanted to say something.
Yeah, Brother Basil. I was just going to leave it actually, but from what I can see, it doesn't actually look like he was told what to do with Isaac. He was just told to take Isaac to a mountain. It was almost like it doesn't look clear that he was actually told, you're going to sacrifice Isaac. It was more of just take Isaac to a mountain. That's what I'm reading. I don't know.
Oh, it says, and bring him out for a burnt offering.
See that bit. For me, it just didn't seem like he was clear on what it was that he was actually doing. I don't know. It just doesn't.
You're actually correct, because some people make that same argument. Some scholars make that same argument. That Abraham misread or misheard what was told. It wasn't really specific. You have a point there. I have to admit that you did.
Rabbi?
Yes, madam.
I was thinking, because in that thing with Abraham rising early in the morning, it also happened when he took Hagar out.
Correct.
To give her the water. So that rising early was sort of not the norm for Abraham to do. Maybe he was directed at that time to go do what he's supposed to do. He was directed from the Father. But I'm thinking, and I'm thinking in human terms right now, I'm thinking that Abraham is maybe thinking like, okay, I'm going to take this young man, he's almost 40 years old, and go sacrifice him. I'm like, 100 years old, how am I going to do this?
Correct.
So I'm not going to say anything to him. When I get there, I'll just do what I have to do. I'll try and do what I have to do. I'm just thinking offhand, like, it's a grown person. So, I mean, he always trusted Yah, but still, how is he going to do this?
Good.
That's what I'm thinking.
Awesome. So how do we know he doesn't question? Because we don't see any questions here. He goes in silence. He doesn't say anything. If you noticed in the prior, Genesis 21, when he was asked, when the debate came to send Ishmael away, he had a protest against the wife, and Yah comes and says, listen to her. No. So the text shows us here that there is no protest. It's just silent. He gets up and he's gone. And we'll see. We'll as we go on, we'll see what is going on here. No question. We don't hear of any prayer from Abraham. He raises no objections. Now, please, before I make this statement, don't misquote me. Don't take it to be what I'm not saying. Mr. Jason mentioned something that was taught to him about an echo. Look at this instruction and the attitude of Abraham. And I want you to place this next to the incident in the Garden of Gethsemane. What is the difference? What do you see that is strikingly different about both parties' attitude?
There was lots of words in the Garden of Gethsemane, and there was lots of begging, please don't let it happen, take this cup from me, all that sort of stuff. But with Abraham, he wasn't really contending with Yah about it and saying, let's not do this, let's do something else, or there's another way. He was just going ahead and just getting on with it. And another thing was quite interesting, I think, is the fact that Isaac wasn't saying anything either.
Thank you. Okay, now I want you to look at it, please. Forget what you've been taught. I'm not bashing anybody, but I want you to be critical. Who amongst these two that I have mentioned should complain based on what you've been taught? Who should be doing the complaining?
Isaac.
Let me rephrase that. Abraham and Yeshua. Who is the one with the complaint?
Abraham. See, it should be Isaac, because Isaac is the sacrifice and he's representing Yeshua.
I understand.
He should be doing what he was doing.
Yeah, Cynthia, the question is between Abraham and Yeshua, not Isaac.
Abraham.
Sorry?
Abraham and Yeshua, who should be complaining?
Abraham.
Why should Abraham be complaining and not Yeshua?
Because Yeshua was meant to die. That's what we were taught.
Okay. Somebody else has anything else to say about why?
Yes, Rabbi?
Yes.
Because Abraham was about to lose his lineage.
Okay.
If that sacrifice, because Ishmael is gone, and the child of promise is the lineage through which that Yah promise is about to disappear.
Awesome. Thank you. Now picture this. And again, I'm begging you. I'm not trying to bash anybody. When you are told that God emptied himself, born of a virgin, that means that none of us can relate to him because none of us are born a virgin. Born of a virgin, and his main task is to deliver us from sin. Number one, you should put Judas on a pedestal because he did what he was supposed to do, because the man came to die. I don't know why you bash Judas. Number two, why the prayer at Gethsemane?
Take this away from me.
Why take this? That was why you came. That was the reason. What if Yah answered that prayer? In the other books, he says, take this away from me, and then it continues, not my will, but your will. But Mark, who writes first, doesn't have that. That is why I said you should look at the book by the authors. Mark has a different perspective of Mashiach, or Yeshua. At his finest hour, this man who wasn't born of a virgin, who had no advantage over us, someone we can relate to, is silent. No word, no protest, no question. He doesn't pray for angels to strengthen him. He wakes up in the morning and he's going. What will make a human being not question Yah. I want you to think about this. Because this scenario here, I'll tell you the fact, you cannot relate to Yeshua because he wasn't born how you were born. He has an advantage. He's born of a Holy Spirit and a woman. You are not. You cannot relate to him because he did not get married and have children. He didn't have marriage issues. You do. He's half God, half human. He emptied himself of God. Well, you did not. If you want someone to relate to, it is this man right here in Genesis 22.
Abraham.
Who Yah comes and tells him, I'm going to test you. Now, picture this. What is at stake here? This test, who is the beneficiary? Think about it carefully. Who is the beneficiary here?
We are.
Look at it carefully. Who is the beneficiary here?
Abraham.
Think about it carefully. Look at it again. Madam Phyllis say, yeah. Another mistake that we make. What is at stake? Yah,
Abraham's.
once again, Yah goes on a mission. He has an idea. And his idea, as we studied in the synopsis of the synoptic, his idea is to extend the heavenly kingdom from the heavenly realm to the earth realm. That is his plan. Everything is engineered for his plan.
Yes.
What does he do? He brings one man, Adam, and his wife, Eve. He says, I want you to take my plan and run with it. This is what I want to do. They mess it up. He comes to their children, could not use them. Comes to Lamech, couldn't use Lamech. Comes to Noah, issues.
Yes.
Couldn't use Shem, Ham, Japheth. His original goal, why he created everything, is not being fulfilled. And then, looking to and fro, he sees a man called Abraham, whose brother dies. And he goes into action to perpetuate the legacy of his brother. It caught his attention. I have seen a human who would go all out for another human's legacy. Maybe I can use him. But first I have to try him.
Yes.
I have to test him. And he puts this man, he comes and introduces himself. I want you to leave everything behind. And we're going to start a journey. A journey that will result in a nation coming out of you. A journey that will change the course of history. And he takes him through these tests. We've seen it. And this night, he comes to him. And as if to say, everything hangs on what happens tomorrow morning, Abraham. If this doesn't work, he has to abandon the ship and go and search for someone else. How long would that take again? Because he cannot use anyone but humans. Yah's legacy is here at stake. Will this human carry this out? Or just like Adam, Cain and Abel, Lamech, Noah, Shem, Ham, Japheth, I would have to abandon this and go searching again. This is what is at stake. And this man doesn't question. I'm saying again, I'm begging you, I'm not comparing him to Yeshua. I'm looking at the echo that who can we relate to? This man, he had family issues, issues with children, financial issues, bad decisions. One of the greatest challenges of any religion is faith. Often we think of the central challenge of faith as believe in God. Believe that God exists, that He is around. But that is not how the Torah uses the word faith. That's the word emunah. Emunah is used in the Torah in a way which almost certainly does not mean to believe in God or to believe that God exists. After the splitting of the sea, the people had faith in Yah. Does it mean that was the first time that they believed that God existed? No, not at all. We see Moshe rebuke the people for lack of faith in the sin of the spies when they go and they bring an evil report and everybody wants to go back to Egypt. Does Moshe seriously mean to say that the Hebrews did not believe in God? That they doubted He existed? No. Why? They got manna from heaven. They experienced the revelation at Sinai. They saw the 10 plagues. They saw the splitting of the sea. These guys didn't believe that God was around when they saw all these. So the Hebrews not having faith, we might consider as the last thing that the Hebrews of the desert would have struggled with. And yet, according to Moshe, this is the people's crime in the wake of the report of the spies. The Torah, when it talks about faith, emunah, isn't talking about faith in terms of belief that Yah exists. The Israelites in the desert knew that Yah existed. What the Torah is telling us really is that the real journey of faith begins then. When you believe, that is when the real journey of faith begins. Believing that Yahweh exists, that's the little leagues. What happens after you believe that? There is the real journey of faith. That's the big leagues. What happened after you believe? You know that He exists. Now the journey of faith begins. So believing that God exists, that's the little leagues. What happens after you believe? That is where the real journey of faith begins. I want to focus on that journey towards something else after we believe that He exists. What is that something else? How do we achieve this thing called emunah, faith? We have to try to define our terms. The word emunah is used not to describe human feelings, not just to describe human feelings. It is actually used to describe Moshe's arm in the battle against Amalek. Context: the Hebrews prevailed in that battle only so long as Moshe's arm was raised. His arms were tied. So Aaron and his colleague held his arms up. Exodus 17. It came to pass that when Moshe would raise his hand, Israel would prevail. And when he would lay down his hands, Amalek would prevail. Now Moshe's hands were heavy, was tired. So they took a stone and placed it under him, and he sat on it. Aaron and Hur supported his hands, one from this side and one from the other side. So he was with his hands in emunah, faith, until sunset. His hands were faithful. His hands were steadfast. His hands were committed, dedicated, devoted. Emunah is identified with that idea of steadfastness. When you take it out of the realm of inanimate objects like arms and you take it into the realm of human relationships, it's a kind of steadfast quality in my relationship with you, a kind of unflinching unwillingness to trust, even as I confront my deepest fears. Was Abraham scared? Of course he was. But there was a reason why he does not show any emotions, complain, protest. A kind of steadfast quality in my relationship with you, a kind of unflinching willingness to trust you even as I confront my deepest fears. That's the sense in which Moshe uses faith in the sin of the spies. The Hebrews were afraid. They were afraid of conquering the land. They looked at the inhabitants of the land and they seemed like giants. Moshe accuses them of the lack of faith at that moment. He tells them, but Yahweh, your Elohim, who goes before you, he will fight for you, just as he did for you in Egypt, before your very eyes. You have an experience with him. You've had experiences with him. In the desert, where you have seen how Yahweh, your Elohim, has carried you as a man carries his son. All the way that you have gone until you have come to this place. So you have experiences. You know this deity. But regarding this matter, you did not believe Yahweh, your Elohim. In this, you did not have trust. You weren't steadfast with Yahweh. You shrank away from Yahweh, even as Yahweh lovingly was telling you to trust him. When Moshe makes his accusations, he doesn't say that you failed to blindly have faith in Yahweh. No. He actually appeals to a kind of rational base for that faith, to their experience. Moshe appeals to their experience. That is where faith comes from, not blindly. Faith is coming from the experience that you have had in the past. That is where you draw it from. So in Moshe's worldview, faith doesn't come from nothing. It comes from observing things about your beloved that makes them trustworthy. And this is why Abraham doesn't complain. It was this same person who told me to leave my father's house, and I did. It was this same person who rescued me when I went down to Egypt and me and my wife was in trouble. It was this same person when I had the disagreement with my family, my kingsman Lot, and he was taken by the 4 kings. I went, and he gave me strength to recover him. It was this same person who told me that from my loins I'm going to have a son. And it happened. It is this same person who told me to send my son Ishmael away. And I did. Now this same person comes. And what does he say? And it came to pass after these things that Elohim tested Abraham. And he said to him, Abraham. And he said, Hineni. I am here. Here I am. This is an expression of total openness to the other, of complete readiness to embrace one's commitment. Hineni, as if to say, I'm ready. Whatever you want, ask. I'm devoted, I'm dedicated, I'm committed, I'm steadfast. And we know the beneficiary of this is Yah. Everything is at stake. Would I stop here and choose this man and his descendants, or am I going to have to go through the trouble to go look for someone else? How long would it take for my will to be done on earth? Here I am. And he said, please take your son. I know he's your son. Take him, your only one, whom you love. Yes, Isaac. He's making it so personal. He's affirming their relationship. What I'm asking you to take your son. Understand the relationship you have. Understand where your loyalty is. Understand where your obligation is. And go away to the land of Moriah and bring him up there for a burnt offering on one of the mountains of which I tell you. And Abraham arose early in the morning, verses 3, and he saddled his donkey, and he took his 2 young men with him, and Isaac his son, and he split wood for a burnt offering, and he arose and went to the place of which Elohim had told him. On the 3rd day, Abraham lifted up his eyes and saw the place from afar. And Abraham said to his young men, stay here with the donkey, and I and the lad will go yonder. He's not prophesying here. He cannot, just the literal read, he cannot tell them what he's going to go do. He cannot say, I'm going to go yonder with the lad, I'm going to return. They'll ask questions. Nobody knows what's going on here, just him. So he's not prophesying that they will return. He's just not giving them information. What is happening? What is happening is between him, Isaac, and Yah. So stay here with the donkey, and I and the lad will go yonder. See what he did. It's as if Abraham is struggling. Abraham doesn't refer to Isaac as his son. The lad. Maybe that's his way of not really getting involved emotionally. Maybe he's separating himself from his son so that things will be easy for him. It could be. Yas tells him, your son Isaac. He tells the lad, I'm going to go with the lad. Very difficult. I want you to put yourself in the shoes. Focus your attention to a fascinating pattern in verses 6 to 9, which reveals what the text is really about. I'm going to read it and then I'll show you the chiasm that's going on here. And Abraham took the wood for the burnt offering, and he placed it upon his son Isaac, and he took into his hand the fire and the knife, and they both went together. And Isaac spoke to Abraham his father, and he said, my father. And he said, here I am, my son. And he said, here are the fire and the wood, but where is the lamb for the burnt offering? And Abraham said, Elohim will provide for himself the lamb for the burnt offering, my son. And they both went together. And they came to the place of which Elohim had spoken to him. And Abraham built the altar there and arranged the wood. And he bound Isaac his son and placed him on the altar upon the wood. Do you notice any pattern? I know it's hard to notice it now, but are there any words or phrases which repeat? That's what I'm going to chase. I'm going to use the literal device called chiasm. I would explain it later, maybe after the class. Look at verses 6 to 9. Look at verse 6 and
Here I am.
Look at verses 6 and 9. Look at verses 6 and 9. At the end of verses 6, we are told that Abraham takes wood and lays it on top of Isaac. And Abraham took the wood for the burnt offering and he placed it upon his son Isaac. Let's think about this image. If you want to carry branches of wood on your back, what would you have to do to them? You'd have to tie them together into a bundle. That means that in verses 6, we have tied up wood on top of Isaac. I think Madam Margaret mentioned this sometime. You have tied up wood on top of Isaac. He's carrying it. Now, take a look at verses 9. We are told that, and he bound Isaac his son and placed him on the altar upon the wood. Abraham ties up Isaac and lays him on top of the wood that is on the altar. In other words, now instead of Isaac carrying tied up wood, Isaac is tied up on top of the wood. So it's a mirror image. What is happening in verses 6 and 9 about the wood is a mirror image. So that is our first clue. That's why I have it in blue. Isaac is carrying it. Now Isaac is on it. The wood was bound on Isaac's back, carrying it. Now Isaac is bound and he's on the wood. Put that in your spirit. That's our first clue. If you look at verses 6 and 8, you see that they end with the exact same phrase. That's the phrase, and they both went together. What I have in yellow. And he took into his hand the fire and the knife, and they both went together. Verses 8. And Abraham said, Elohim will provide for himself the lamb for the burnt offering, my son. And they went together. It's not unusual for the Bible to repeat a phrase if it's an important part of the storyline, but here it doesn't seem to add much. Think about it this way. If you didn't have the second and they went together in verses 8, if you didn't have that second one, would you really wonder, wait, are they still together? I mean, there's only one verse in between. So you do not have to repeat and they went together because we know that they have been together. They're going up the hill, just two of them. Why repeat that they went together? Put that in your spirit. Let's put a flag right there because this may add to that second clue. Okay. What we're seeing here in blue and yellow is what we call a chiasm. I'll explain that. I'll just move on. It's a chiasm. I think in one of my books, I use that. I think in the book of Samuel that is getting ready now, I use that to explain a lot of things. Yeah. This isn't just a coincidence. Indeed, the pattern continues. The pattern of the chiasm continues. It builds outwardly and then it focuses on the middle. The middle is where the bullseye is. That's what we're chasing. It's going to tell us what this whole narrative is about. Okay. It turns out that this is the only conversation between Abraham and Isaac in the entire Torah. Here. This is the only recorded conversation between father and son. So it has to be quite important. What did they say to one another? Let's first try to understand their dialogue. And Isaac spoke to Abraham his father, and he said, my father. And he said, here I am, my son. Read that slowly and you see that there's an issue here. Isaac said to Abraham, his father, and then we are waiting to hear what it is that Isaac said. But then Isaac stopped and he said something else. And that something else that he said was, Avi, my father. As difficult as it is, put yourself in Abraham's shoes at this moment. You have somehow managed to submit yourself to a divine command to sacrifice your child, a command that goes against everything that you believe to be right and just. What will be going on in your mind right now? If you are Abraham and you hear those words my Father, what would you want to do? Those are the two words that you just don't want to hear right now. Because what are you going up to the mountain to do? You're going up to the mountain because Yah told you you have to give back your son. You have to kill your son and offer him up to Yah at the top of the mountain. It's inconceivable. But that is what Yah said that he wants. What's the one obligation that a father has towards his son? The one obligation is protection. And here you are going to kill your son instead of protecting him. So if you are Abraham, how do you do this? You try to avoid thinking about it. You think about anything you can think about. You want to be distracted. Maybe you're talking about the weather. You're talking about this, the football game, something. You are talking about something that would distract you. But the one thing you don't want to think about is the father-son relationship. But the Torah goes out of its way to tell you, readers, look, it is there. This moment when Isaac utters that one word, Avi, he is shining the spotlight on their relationship. If you are Isaac's father and you hear that word from your son, how do you want to respond? You want to evade it somehow, to avoid facing the painful truth. You want to shut down emotionally, to maintain your precious facade of denial. You want to talk about anything other than your relationship as a parent and a child. That statement by Isaac reminds us who Abraham is. Abraham is his father, and Isaac said to Abraham, his father. And he said one word, my father. And if you are Isaac's father and you hear those words from your son, what do you do now? What do you want to do? You want to run away. You want to run down the mountain. You want to have nothing to do with this. Forget it. I'm out of here. And if you don't run away physically like Haggai did, you run away emotionally. You want to talk about anything than what Isaac wants to talk about. What is going to happen in this conversation? Because this is the conversation where Isaac finds out the truth. He says, my father. What was Abraham's response? Hineni. An expression of total openness to the other, of complete readiness to embrace one's commitment. Imagine the scene again. Abraham and Isaac are stopped on the path. Abraham looks up and he meets his son's gaze. The two of them lock eyes. Abraham could have turned away, but he doesn't. He doesn't change the topic. He doesn't brush it off. He doesn't run from the relationship. Rather, he affirms it. Hineni, yes, I am your father, and you are my son. I am here for you. Hineni. Isaac said, here are the fire and the wood, but where is the lamb for the burnt offering? Where is the lamb? I want to point out, I think we've done this when we're talking about Abraham and Sarah when the angels came to their tent. that the language that is used here is a little bit unusual. There are two words in Hebrew for where. You have aye and then ifo. Now, one might ask, why do we need two words that mean the same thing? Well, the answer is they don't. They have slightly different meanings. If you do an experiment and look for all the instances of the word ifo in the Torah and compare it to the instances of aye, you start to see a pattern to detect some of the nuances between them. For starters, you find that ifo almost always is a general request for location. So when I say, where is the bank? I don't know where the bank is. I want information to where the bank is. I'll use ifo for where. Aye is not a question of location, where someone is. Isaac isn't asking, hey, Dad, where's the lamb? Did we leave it back home? That is an ifo question. Aye is an emotional question. It's asking where about something that is missing is at. Something whose presence or whose absence, may be a cause of concern, sometimes even anguish. You put your wallet, your purse somewhere, and when you came, it wasn't there. You don't say ifo, you say aye. It was supposed to be here, but it's not here. So aye is never a request for location. Aye never means where are you? It means where have you gone? Why aren't you here? Where did the lamb go? That's a different question entirely. The question is, am I the lamb? This is the conversation where Isaac finds out. Isaac is asking, where did the lamb go? It was supposed to be here. In other words, he's asking, am I the lamb? That's a stark, painful question. And how does Abraham answer his son? Let's look carefully at what happens next in this conversation. The only conversation we have between Abraham and Isaac. Where is the lamb? Am I the lamb? And Abraham said, Elohim will provide for himself the lamb for the burnt offering, my son. Elohim will show for himself a lamb for the offering, my son. And the question is, what exactly does that mean? It actually depends on where you put the comma. The phrase could be understood in two ways, one of two ways. Either it can mean Elohim will provide for himself the lamb for the offering, comma, my son. So, if you don't read it that way, because they're not writing it, they were speaking it. If you don't read it that way, and you read it, Elohim will show for himself a lamb for the offering. You don't put a comma, and you write my son. Then maybe my son is the offering. That's what he's saying in the second explanation. It depends on how you read it. But they were saying this, we're not writing it. So the author has to find the person writing has to find where to put the punctuation. And also in the original text of the Torah, there are no punctuations. You don't have the commas and capital letters. You don't have all that. So here the author, the person translating is trying to help us. So it depends on where you put the comma. So what is happening here is that Abraham is being ambiguous. Why is Abraham being ambiguous? Maybe the answer is Abraham doesn't know what's going to be at the top of this mountain. It doesn't make any sense. Yah promised that there would be a great nation coming through you. But he's also telling me to come, and I'm supposed to offer up my son at the top of the mountain? None of this makes any sense. What's going to happen at the top of the mountain? I don't know. But I know one thing. I know that Yah has a job to do, and I have a job to do. Yah has a job to do as our creator, and I have a job to do as a father to you, my son. I really don't know. Yah is going to figure it out. And this is Abraham's response. He has no clue, but he does not run away. Come back to our pattern, our chiasm. There are 5, and he said, Vayomer, in the middle of our pattern. The middle is verses 7 and 8. There are 5 Vayomers, and he said. If there are 5, there's a middle one. The middle Vayomer, and he said, is what Abraham said to Isaac after Isaac said, my father. And what was that? He said, Hineni, I am here, my son. At the center of the binding of Isaac, that is the word that stands out. I am here. Right when I want to run away most, I am here for you. Ask your question. I know who you are. You are my son, and I'm your father. Now ask your question. Where was the first time we saw this word, I am here, in the narrative? That was his response to Yah. We see it again in the middle of his interaction with Isaac. We see it again, that saying, here I am, at the end, when the angel calls out to Abraham. Abraham's greatness was that he didn't run away, not physically and not emotionally. What's going to happen on top of the mountain? I have no idea. I am your father and I'm here for you. It's fascinating that the binding of Isaac begins with Hineni to Yah. Yah calls out and says, Abraham, Abraham. And he says, here I am. I'm ready for business. I'm dedicated. I'm focused. I'm steadfast. I'm available. What is it? Because it's one thing to say, here I am to Yah. Very easy to say that. It's another thing to say, here I am to the angel. Very easy to say that. But it's another thing to say, here I am to Isaac. That's the most difficult part. Because you're thinking, Yah has said it. Abraham's greatness is that he balances all of this. Not only is he there for Yah, he's there for his son. Not only is he there for eternity, he's also there for time. Hineni is at the start, the middle, and the end of the narrative. What do we make of that? It suggests that the same readiness and commitment that Abraham shows to Yahweh, he shows to Isaac. He balances all of it. He doesn't forgo any of the relationships because they are all important. I don't understand it, my son. I don't. But I will not abandon you. You are still my son, and we're going to walk this thing out. Look at something amazing. After their conversation, after Abraham has said, Elohim will provide for himself the lamb for the burnt offering, my son, the text says, and they went together. I believe this is the most profound statement in the narrative. This speaks about Isaac. He did not know, but yet they were walking in one accord. Father and son, committed. I'm going to help my father. The moment he knows that that is him who is going to be sacrificed, put on the altar, he could have run away. He was an adult. He could have said, no, it's not happening. Forget you. But Isaac focused. You here for me? Let's go. And they both went together. The same way that they walked together before this conversation, they walked together after this conversation. In unity, with one goal, with one mission. We may not understand it, but Yah has spoken. This is the greatness of Isaac. Sometimes we just give the credit to Abraham. But Isaac doesn't run away. One accord. And they came to the place of which Elohim had spoken to him. And Abraham built the altar there and arranged the wood. And he bound Isaac his son and placed him on the altar upon the wood. No struggle. No struggle. He's an adult. And Abraham stretched forth his hand. Abraham would have to bind him because, instincts. Like you do the animal so that the animal doesn't move too much, so that you want just one slice and the animal is dead because you don't want the animal to have any pain. Same here. He's going to bind him just to restrict him, so that when his natural instincts kicks in, his survival instinct kicks in, he's not going to interrupt anything. And Abraham stretched forth his hand and took the knife, the butcher's knife, to slaughter his son. And an angel of Elohim called him from heaven and said, Abraham, Abraham. The same answer. Here I am. Committed, I'm focused, I'm dedicated. It's like the idea is like you interrupted me. I'm here. Come in. What do you want? You want me to change the position? You want me to put water on his head? What do you want? I'm ready to do it. He says, here I am. Abraham could turn off to Isaac and say, I have nothing to do with him. My allegiance is to Yahweh. Or he could just say, Yahweh, I have nothing to do with you. This is crazy. My allegiance is to my son. Abraham's greatness is he is going to be here for both of them. It's a contradiction. It makes no sense. It doesn't matter. I have allegiance towards both. At the top of the mountain, Yahweh is going to have to figure it out. Until then, I'm here, not just for Yahweh. That's the easy part. I am here for my son too. And that's the greatness of Abraham. Abraham has allegiance to every important relationship, even when these two worlds collide. It doesn't make any sense. That is Yahweh's problem. He will have to figure it out. I am here for both. Abraham, Abraham, says the angel. He says, here I am. And he said, do not stretch forth your hand to the lad, nor do the slightest thing to him. Pause. Why that emphasis? It seems that Abraham just wanted to at least cut something. That's his dedication. Don't stretch forth your hands and don't do the slightest thing. Don't even pinch him. Leave him alone. It's okay. This is a test. That's the dedication and commitment of going all out. Do not stretch forth your hand to the lad, nor do the slightest thing to him. For now I know that you stand in awe of me. He says, now I know. You could imagine the joy in the heavenlies. One man has gone past his instincts. One man who would put himself on the line for the legacy of another, a human, and then Yah himself. He says, now I know that you stand in awe of me, and you did not withhold your son, your only son. Go back to verses 12. Look at how the heavenly court addresses Isaac. He says, do not stretch forth your hand to the lad. To the heavens, Isaac is a lad. Pay attention to that. To the heavens, he's the lad, he's the boy. Nor do the slightest thing to him. For now I know that you are a God-fearing man. That is bad translation. You stand in awe of me is the correct translation. And you did not withhold who? Your son. When it comes to Abraham and his relations, the heavenly court addresses him as your son. You did not let go of that relationship. You did not abandon it. He's a lad to us. But boy, Abraham, you have shown us that that is your son. You didn't run away from him. You were committed. Let's come back to where we were. And you did not withhold your son, your only son, from me. And Abraham lifted up his eyes and he saw, and lo, there was a ram. And after that, it was caught in a tree by its horns. Why the emphasis? Do we care which part of the ram was caught by? Which part? Why not the leg? His head, its tail, his whole body. Why the ram's horn? What does that remind you of? The ram's horn. That's a question. What does the ram's horn remind you of?
The shofar.
The shofar. The shofar. Awesome. What does the shofar mean? When we blow the shofar on, is it Rosh Hashanah? On the feast day, what does it mean? What are we blowing? What is it saying? The word shofar comes from the root I forgot the shippo. Oh, I forgot. But it means to improve. Auntie Anaya is correct. To be aware, to improve. When we're blowing it, improve. So he's caught in a tree by its horn. And Abraham went and took the ram and offered it up as a burnt offering instead of his son. And Abraham named the place Yahweh will see, as it is said to this day. On the mountain, Yahweh will be seen. And an angel of Yahweh called Abraham a second time from heaven. And he said, by myself have I sworn. Imagine the joy in heaven. This man has moved, a human like me and you. He has challenged his status quo. And Yah is saying, by myself have I sworn, says Yahweh, that because you have done this thing and you did not withhold your son, your only one, that I will surely bless you and I will greatly multiply your seed as the stars of the heavens, and as the sand that is on the seashore. And your descendants will inherit the cities of their enemies, and through your children shall be blessed all the nations of the world, because you hearken to my voice. Powerful. And Abraham returned to his young men. What's the problem with that verse? 19. And Abraham returned to his young men. You have to ask a question there. Look at verses 19. What is wrong with it?
What about Isaac?
What about Isaac? Where is Isaac? And Abraham returned to his young men. And they arose and went together to Beersheba. And Abraham remained in Beersheba. And it came to pass after these matters that it was told to Abraham, saying, Behold, Milcah, she also bore sons to Nahor, your brother. Their names are mentioned. Verse 23. And Bethulah begat Rebekah. I explain this. Why do we need to know that Rebekah was born? Put it together. Yes, go ahead, Madam Cynthia.
Is it because of the fact that she was going to be his wife? But also, I'm just there's something that's really that's sort of messing with me.
Yes, hold that thought first. Hold that thought, Madam Cynthia. Let's focus on the Rebecca one. Why is Rebecca mentioned here after Abraham had passed the test?
Because the legacy starts with her.
Thank you. What is happening here is the passing on of the baton. Abraham has been waiting for this moment. Abraham knows that he will not live to see the promise that has been given him. He understands the prophecy. But for the son to take the baton, the son has to be there to see the father's dedication to this God. It's not just father saying that here you go. No, Yah has to pass him through the same test. Will this heir to the promise be dedicated as the father is? Would they pass this test together? Because if Isaac doesn't go through the same trials, he will mess up the legacy. Solomon talks about it. He says, vanity, havel, havelim, all is havel. For a man to work, toil the days of his life, and then his son will come and misuse everything. Solomon says that is vanity. It's like herd in the wind. Like the lion who hunts with the next generation watching. Yah says, take him. We're going to pass down the legacy. This is where everything, from here, Yah doesn't talk to Abraham again. Because he passes the baton here. Isaac doesn't come down from the mountain. He's the one that's taking the stage. But nothing can happen if you don't have a womb. Nothing can happen if you don't have the woman there. So the text goes out of his way to tell us that the next matriarch has been born. Now we have the transition of legacy. But Isaac had to be present to see father's dedication, father's commitment. Father never questioned you. It's like, yeah, he's telling Isaac, watch, pay attention, take notes, because everything now hangs on you. You see, the binding of Isaac isn't just about Abraham's commitment to Yah. We all know that Abraham is loyal to Yah, that he passed Yah's test. That is explicit in the verse. But the binding of Isaac is also about Abraham's commitment to Isaac, about Abraham's loyalty to his own moral compass. The quiet moment shared between a father and son, that moment when the father could have run away from their relationship, but didn't. That's the bullseye. That was another test, a test of Abraham's devotion to his son, and he passed it. That's what the Bible wants us to read between the lines and see. Abraham maintained his loyalty to Yah and to Isaac. Even when his two worlds collided, even when it ceased to make any sense, at the top of the mountain, Yah will figure it all out. He must have told himself, all I know is that I am here for Yah and I'm here for my son. He stood unwavering in his commitment to eternity and time. He stood unwavering in his commitment to Yah and to man. That was this man's greatness. And after that, we'll see the next narrative. Before he dies, he goes and he says, go bring the wife. Go home. Bring the next generation. Those who are going to carry the mantle. Bring them together. I believe David got this principle from Abraham when Yah said, you cannot build a temple. But he said, one thing I can do, I can make it easy for the next generation to build it. So Abraham purchases land. Now, he sends for Rebekah. And now Isaac carries the baton. This is what I think is Abraham's finest moment. Would we pass that same test? Do we usually abandon family because of Yah? Do we cut our relationships because of eternity? And we never turn to focus on time, to focus on family, to focus on our children. When we build legacies, do we put our children there to see what's going on? So that they see the dedication that we work with. So they see the conviction. So that when it is their turn, they also work the legacy with the same dedication. I think Isaac proves it when we are told that all Isaac did was re-dig the wells of Abraham.